What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. Love is sometimes too big to put into words. We have to hear it sung to us, hugged into us, brought to us with gifts of food when we are ill, acts of kindness, acts of showing up, being present to one another. And there's so many kinds of love, and on Valentine's Day we often see the kind of cheesy romantic kind, in the commercials. Bring a Valentine, bring some chocolate. But there is agape, which is called brotherly love in Greek, refers to deeper affection rather than attraction suggested by eros. Agape is used in the New Testament and ancient texts to denote feelings for one's children or one's spouse, sacrificial loves, or even feeling for a good meal. I have agape for your beef stroganoff. Eros is passionate love with sensual desire and longing. However, eros does not have to be sexual. Plato had his own definition. Although eros is initially felt for a person, with contemplation, it becomes an appreciation of the beauty within that person, or an appreciation for beauty itself. Makes me think of longer love. Philia, which is friendship in Greek. It is a concept that was developed by Aristotle. And then storge, and if I'm mispronouncing the Greek, I apologize. It means affection, and it is natural affections that parents might feel for offspring. And when we think of all these definitions, and we think of the big L word, what is our relationship to love? What is it that calls us to respond to that idea? And I know for me, it's seeing the dignity and worth in every person. I've been thinking a lot about, what is the thing that I would say is my most important belief? What is the thing that I would march down the street for, that I would put my life on the line for? And what is it that gets me up in the morning? And it's a call to love. It's a call to be present and show up and to recognize the dignity in every person. This past week, I talked with a couple people about the damage that had been done in their lives from a religion, a background that told them that they were not worthy. And they have spent so much time unpacking that pain and trying to come back to the world in a different way. And I have to think, what would it be like if love was present in all sacred spaces in a way that did not call us into a us versus them, or you're not in the club that's saved, or you're not worthy or not good enough? So I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time taking those messages out of my brain. It's so easy to tear ourselves down when we think about the messages that tell us to buy a faster car, to look younger, to be a better parent, to be a better spouse, to do better. And it can feel like there's not enough. Am I enough? And I have to say, I hear that from a lot of people. And I know that I'm not alone when I look in the mirror and I'm sitting there criticizing myself, and I have to say, shut up, Julie. Shut up. And be nice to you. So you guys be nice to you. And be as kind to yourself as you would be to your best friend or the stranger who's weeping on the street. Be kind to yourself. Self-love is not narcissistic. It is not selfish. It is the place where love begins. In 1956, psychologist and social philosopher Erich Fromm proposed that loving yourself is different from being arrogant and conceited or egocentric. He wrote that loving yourself means caring about yourself, taking responsibility, respecting yourself, and knowing yourself. For example, being realistic about your strengths and weaknesses. Fromm claimed that in order to be truly able to love another person, you have to love yourself first. And so I think that we can spend most of our lives trying to love ourselves, trying to be better people, sure, but to give ourselves some slack. And I heard from some of you online, I said, what does it mean to be wise in love? And I got some fun responses. And I wanted to think, we think about a lot of philosophers, and we, like Henry David Thoreau or Socrates, say. And I wanted to see what they said about love. And I found a funny little book about philosophers who failed at love. So Titus Lucretius Carus was a Roman poet and philosopher. His only known work is a philosophical poem, a didactic work about the tenets and philosophy of Epicureanism. And it was called On the Nature of Things in English. Titus Lucretius ingested a love potion, which drove him insane. It was not called love potion number 9, though. Seneca the Younger in 4 BC was known simply as Seneca. He was a Roman Stoic philosopher, statement, dramatist, and in one word, a satirist. In 41 BC, Seneca the Younger is banished from Rome for sleeping with a married princess. He had an affair with Emperor Claudius's niece, Julia. So in 1385, St. Augustine of Hippo, engaged to a young lady, heard a heavenly voice that led him to a life of celibacy, and he ended his engagement. In 1250, St. Thomas of Aquinas, his family hired a prostitute to seduce him. He chased her away with a hot firebrand. In 1540, John Calvin, my favorite theologian, engaged to a young German-speaking woman, called it off because she failed to learn French. Je ne sais quoi. In 1840, Henry David Thoreau had a marriage proposal to Ellen Sewell, and it was rejected, and he gave up on love forever. According to Andrew Schaeffer's work, in 1839, Henry David Thoreau and his brother John both fell in love with the same girl. Her father, a Unitarian minister, did not approve of these young Thoreau boys. John proposed to Ellen first. She rejected him. Henry tried his hand and proposed to her in a letter, which is very telling for Thoreau. And although the letter had not survived, a 1840 entry had this language: I thought that the sun of our love should have risen as noiselessly as the sun out of the seas. Henry's proposal was also swiftly rejected. And he was infatuated with women, but throughout his life, he never fell in love again because he thought that she was the one for him. In 1862, Leo Tolstoy showed his bride diaries on their wedding day, revealing a world of prostitutes, promiscuity, and gonorrhea in unflinching detail. So while philosophers have wonderful things to tell us, I think that we have learned that they don't always have wisdom of the heart. And so I think thinking, this is Andrew Schaeffer's book, is called Great Philosophers Who Failed at Love. And I think that's a harsh statement. You know, all of us at one point or another have missteps in love, hopefully not showing our our significant other, like Leo Tolstoy, but we make mistakes, and I think we have to forgive ourselves for saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And I look back and I think of my great grandmother. Her name was Frances, and I think all of us have someone that we look up to and can model our lives after. And I always thought, I want to be like Grand Frances. My Nana was an anxious lady, and she was a flapper. She's like, oh, Julie, oh, she would always be like, let me get your thing and do the thing, and you need to sit up straight and wear gloves and do the thing. And so I was always a little anxious around Nana because I wanted to be the best I could be. But a lot of that tape of good enough kind of came out of some of that. And my Grand Frances, on the other hand, she was mellow yellow. I could go to her and just be totally in a tizzy, and she'd say, Julie, why don't you sit down and tell me all about it? And I would tell her about it. And she would make fruit cocktail in her little jelly glasses. She'd plop it out of the can. It had been in the refrigerator. And she'd go plop, plop, put some whip on it, and we would eat our little fruit. But my great-grandmother may not have written a treatise on the nature of the soul, but she lived to be 101 with a calm and loving temperament. She accepted people mostly without judgment and made some wonderful choices in love as she learned from her own life challenges. Unfortunately, her husband drank himself to death in 1929 as the markets began to fall, during the great crash of 1929. And there is a not very nice epitaph on his grave, actually, about that, or an article. But she raised her children on her own. She picked up her life as a single parent. She taught school in a one-room schoolhouse. She owned a dress shop with her sister. She was first violin in the Florence, South Carolina Orchestra. And she never submitted herself to a marriage again. Women did not have the same sort of rights in those days. She said, I had a beau that I sat out on the porch with for 30 years, Julie, but we never married. I said, very good, Grand Frances. She had her freedom and she had love on her terms, and she showed so much grace and care. I can just think of the family events when everything was going wrong and people were sniping at each other, and she would just be kind of the calm sea in the middle. And I think that's how she lived to be 101, was that kind of balance. So finding respect and love is a struggle. It's a struggle within ourselves. In Patty Dye's book, Life is a Verb, 37 Days to Wake Up, Be Mindful, and Live Intentionally. That's a long one. It's a great book. She said, do we love ourselves for who we are or for only what we have? Do we love others for who they are and not what they have? It's easy to say, of course I love people for who they are. Of course I can accept and love myself. Yet do we really practice that as we look in the mirror and we go, putting on a couple pounds there, Julie. I'm not so sure about how that's looking on you today. And what about when we're admiring someone else's car or not admiring somebody else's car? How do we measure our worth? We all do it by pant size, IQ, the length of our bio, the number of visitors on our Facebook page. Love can change our lives when we let it in. It's not always easy. There's heartbreak, there's loss of trust, there's bumps along the way. Yet a life without love is a lonely one, and it's isolated. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about the type of love that you can find in community. I think many of us during the pandemic, when many of us were at home and isolated, we found ourselves hungry for contact, hungry for a love that didn't involve the people within our own four walls. And some of us only had ourselves in our four walls, and we looked to our pets or we looked to online. So a love that lasts is one that can weather. It can be sturdy. It can take the tumble. And boy howdy, thank goodness babies are cute, right? They're snuggly. Parental love helps us get through those sleepless nights. We're kind of programmed to put up with a bunch of stuff for those that we love. I have to think that there must be something biological in that. There certainly is for babies. Late night feedings and diaper changes. Love for family helps us put up with ornery siblings. I don't know about you, but when you go back and visit at a holiday, I know it's always just like I fall back into the same patterns. Oh, that Julie, she's so silly, and then Robert, he's so serious. It's like we're suddenly 5 and 12 again. Love is universal. We found that babies that are born in NICU units, they need touch to survive. And, we do things because we love them. Choir members get up early on a Sunday morning. Laurel comes here from her farm way back in Oliva and leads the choir. And we think of all the things that we do because of love. But what is it to be transformed by love? What is it to risk love? When we think about, it can be easy to say, well, I love my friend. But when your friend calls you at 2 a.m. and is having a crisis and you need to get up at 8 a.m., that's sometimes when you're stretched a little bit. Or when you yourself have a crisis of faith, can I get through this? Can I make it through this hard time? Can I love myself enough? Can I trust myself enough? When I think about how love shows up, I think about the people who take risk and who have what's called positive vulnerability, and that's become a catchphrase all over the place. And usually the idea of being vulnerable just really stinks. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I don't think I want to be vulnerable. That sounds pretty awful. But the problem is if we are Fort Knox, there's nobody getting in, and there's nothing getting out. It usually takes a risk, like after service, going up to someone and saying, "Hi, I'm Julie. I liked your song." "Oh, I see you're wearing pink. I like pink too." Some of us, it's like putting, stepping on hot coals to talk to someone in a social situation. But when we take that risk, sometimes we make a friend. Sometimes we find something new. And maybe just coming to this place whenever you came here was a risk. I know some Unitarians, to come to a place that's called a congregation and with a worship service, what? What is that? And yet we come here from all of our different beliefs and we explore love. We try and show up for love. So when I think about myself and my Grand Francis, and I remember my Nana would make sure I had polished little white shoes. I had my little Sunday dress, and I couldn't make the dress get messy. Had to watch what I ate in the morning. And then we would go to church, and I would do everything just right and go to the Methodist Sunday school. And then I just remember feeling like if I followed all the rules, and then maybe God would think I was okay. Maybe then it would be okay. And then I would go to my Grand Francis's house afterwards, and I just remember something lifting. She'd say, "Come on in the kitchen, Julie. Help me make, whatever it was." And she'd say, "Tell me about your poetry." And I would make up poems with her, and we would write them down. I found a couple in a journal, and we would and I'd be like, "I am Julie Libby, I love my Grand Frances. She likes fruit. Julie, that's the best poem I've ever heard. Oh, thank you, Grand Frances. Let's do that again. Okay. And you think about the things that you pour into people and the things that you pour into yourself. You know, what are the words that we are pouring into ourselves each day? When we say love is the spirit of this church, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. When we say you're okay, you're not going to hell for believing in Buddhism or paganism or atheism. You're okay. You're allowed to grow and to change and to be who you are and to show up for yourself and to be vulnerable. And I want all of our littles, all of our elders, all of the ages to know that it's okay to change and to grow. And if we're not changing and growing, then we're not engaging in love because we're Fort Knox, you know? So this week, think about all those different kinds of love. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It can be friendship, it can be your neighbor, it can be the grouchy woman in the checkout line in front of you and you just give her a nice smile. Because she might be grouchy for a really good reason. So this week, if you think about love, think about how it shows up for you and how you can show up for others. Amen.